Hi friends, and welcome back for part 3 of our mindful craft, where we will be making our spin drum. And in today's session, we'll actually be assembling this awesome spin drum, which is one of my favorite types of mindful tools because there are so many parts that it helps us to remember. But each time that we use it, it also helps us to grow our focus so we can pay attention for longer and stronger. And it's also a reminder of all of the projects that we've done. So we'll talk a little bit more about this spin drum and the benefits and the ways to use it as we complete it. But let's go ahead and get started so that you know the materials that you are going to need. So for our work today, the first thing that you're going to need are your 2 drawings from before. Your calm drawing that we completed in the first drawing, and then your drawing of what calm or content or happiness looks like from our second video. Now, in addition to that, today you're also going to need some cardboard, which I used my original pictures once I cut them out to be able to trace to make them the same size as you'll be able to do today. So once you have that, you'll obviously need some scissors to do some of your cutting, right? You're also going to need for today a glue stick or possibly even a glue gun if you have that or you have the help of an adult, because as we know, that can be really hot and potentially dangerous. You're going to need the original way to do this is you're going to need something pointy to be able to make the holes that we need to do to attach our strings and our beads. So you're going to need like a skewer or something like a scissor tip or a screwdriver or something. And again, this might be something that you need to ask an adult for some help with. For this one, I'm going to be using a skewer. You might also want something that you're going to use for the handle of your spin drum. And so in my spin drum, I used a straw, which I cleaned out, but you can also use your skewer if you want to, or you have that handy as your handle as well. Then you're also going to need 2 beads and some string. And so I'm using some string that I bought from the local craft store. And when you're kind of picking and deciding what string you actually want to use and what beads you want to use, you want to make sure to test it to make sure that you can not only fit it through the bead once, but for this project, in order to reinforce it, we need to make sure that we can fit our string doubled up through our bead. So test that as you are gathering your materials to make sure that you'll have what it is that you need and you won't have any additional kind of frustration in doing this project. So as you go ahead and gather your materials, and if you need to pause the video, you absolutely can. I'm going to kind of just clear my workspace a little bit so that I can show you the first couple of steps of what we're going to do. So first, you're going to want to go ahead and cut your drawings from before. Again, this was from video 1. This is from video 2. Maybe it would help if I turned it the right way. And once you cut that, I found it to be really helpful to lay it onto my cardboard that I was using and to trace the outside of it so that then I could cut my cardboard to be the same size. Now, if you don't have any kind of cardboard, maybe you have some boxes lying around. The cool thing is that depending on the size of your circle that you created, you really don't need a large box in order to be able to cut this. And again, because it's cardboard, it's a little bit thicker. You might need some stronger scissors to be able to get through it, right? And so once you have cut basically your 4 circles, so your 2 that are from our previous video, and then your 2 circles from the cardboard, what you're going to want to do is take one of these. And this is where you're going to want to take your sharp object, and you're going to place a hole, actually 2 holes, one on both sides of your circle. And so by doing this, this is actually where we're going to put our string into so that we don't have to glue it, and that'll help it to stay so that it is there a little bit stronger and it doesn't come out when we're using our spin drum. And so once you have your first hole done, then you want to kind of make a nice straight line so that you can kind of figure out where the other hole is going to go across from the first hole. And again, the skewer works really well because of the fact that it makes these nice holes. I don't have to push too hard, but you could use a scissor. You could also use a hole puncher if you wanted to. The hole puncher is going to put a little bit of a bigger hole, but that's totally fine, okay? And so once you have your 2 holes, you only have to put this into one. Okay, but the nice thing is by doing this first, then eventually once we put our strings into here, we'll be able to cover up those holes when we put our faces or our drawing of Calm onto here. So once you have your holes put into here, remember you don't need to put it onto the other one. You're going to want to now get your string. And I'm just going to change my camera view here so that you can kind of see what this is going to look like. So let me set this stuff aside and take this one here so that you can see it. Now, working with your string, what I find to be really helpful is you're going to need to double up your string. So there's no harm here in cutting extra string, especially if you have enough of it. So what I have found is that less or having more or extra is actually good. So, but you're going to want to make sure that you have enough string to be double the diameter of your circle, which is the distance straight across. So using your circle to kind of measure it and then doubling that up. Right? So doubling it up so that you can see. And I'm going to go ahead and just kind of give myself a little bit extra, right? Because like I said, there is no harm in having too much string. You can always trim it at the end. But what I learned when I did my first spin drum was that I didn't give myself enough string. And therefore I was a little frustrated when I was trying to make my knots onto here. So once you have your one piece cut, you're going to go ahead and use that to then cut your second piece so that both of your strings will be pretty much the same size. And so once I have that cut, I have my 2 strings, and then let's go ahead and see how we're going to put this in. So using my string, I'm going to kind of double it up here. And I'm going to very carefully try to get my 2 pieces of string to go through my holes. This might be the hardest part of this, right? So when I've gone through the holes, it kind of leaves this loop here. And that's the important part because I'm going to take and put the end of my string through that loop and pull it. And once I do that, you're going to see that it actually makes a little bit of a knot that helps it to stay onto there, which is really, really helpful, right? And that's what I said. We're going to be covering that up, so don't worry about that. And so once you've done that to the one side, you're going to want to do the exact same thing to the other side or the other hole with your string. So doubling it up, pushing the open ends through your other hole. It's going to give you that loop, and then you're going to put the end through the loop and give it a little pull, right? And so this now is what you are going to have. You're going to see here that you have your string through your 2 holes. Now, once you've gone ahead and done that, now it's a time to go ahead and use your glue stick. You can really use any kind of glue that you want to, but I personally have found that a glue stick is my favorite because of the fact that it dries really quickly. And as you can see, the purple one is my favorite because then I can see where I have covered. And then you're going to want to go ahead and you're going to want to put one of your drawings on top of that, and just kind of use your fingers to kind of press it down, right? And then you're going to do now the same thing to your other piece of cardboard. And so even if your cardboard isn't perfect, you'll see how mine has a little bit of a tear on it. It doesn't really matter because we're going to be covering that up with our picture. So going ahead and kind of filling this space with glue so that you can then be able to put your other picture or drawing onto here. Now I put my face onto the one with the strings. It doesn't matter. You can put your calm drawing onto that as long as you wind up putting your drawings onto there. Now, I chose to do 2 pieces of cardboard, and that's just because, again, I found that in using my spin drum, what happens is we're actually going to be using the handle to spin it between our hands. And by doing this, it causes it to spin, and it also causes my strings and my beads to make a very rhythmic sound, right? So this spin drum is actually known as an instrument because it makes a sound or produces a sound by using it, right? It's also known as a calming or relaxing tool because anytime that we use both sides of our body, so our right and our left hand, what we're doing is we're actually telling our brain and our body that everything is safe, everything is okay, and our body actually starts to produce those feel-good chemicals inside of our body to help us to relax and to calm down. So just by using the spin drum, just by making it make this sound and spinning it using our 2 hands, it actually helps us to calm down. Not to mention that the faces and the drawing on here are also a reminder of drawing my calm as well as drawing my content or what my happy and relaxed looks like, right? So now at this point, my 2 pieces should be nice and dry. And this is the part where if you have a glue gun, it's really kind of helpful because what we're going to do is we're now going to flip this over. And this is where we're going to put our handle. Okay, and by putting our handle onto here, I have just found that the glue gun works a little bit better than a glue stick does. But if you only have a glue stick, or tape can be another thing that you use, right? And so I have a glue gun. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a good amount of glue there. And then I'm going to take and put my straw onto here and just kind of hold it down for a moment. You'll notice that when I'm putting my handle on, I kind of want it to be halfway in my circle because that's where my handle is going to be. And you'll notice that I'm also kind of putting it about halfway or 3/4 of the way up my circle. So I still have a good amount of handle to be able to use my spin drum. Now, if you don't have a straw, again, you could also use a stick or a twig. I would just test it to make sure, since you know that you're going to be spinning it between your hands, and just kind of making sure that it doesn't hurt your hands when you're doing it. Okay. And again, like I said, if you don't have a glue gun, that's okay. You can use tape, that works just as well, right? And then once you have your handle put on, now you're going to want to put a little bit more glue or figure out how you're going to put your face on. Now, I like to do my glue my handle to my picture, my calm drawing, because it doesn't really matter which way it faces, but that way I can see which way I'm going to be putting my calm face on. I don't want my calm face to be upside down on my drum. I kind of want it to be straight up and down based on my handle. So again, this is where the glue gun is really helpful because now what we're going to be doing is gluing our calm face onto our spin drum. And now again, if you don't have a glue gun, you could, again, use a glue stick for this part. Just keep in mind you're going to need to test it to make sure that you put enough glue onto there, right? And if you are using a glue gun, kind of putting some pressure on it so that you can squeeze it together, kind of like a sandwich, right? And you might notice that a little bit of glue kind of comes out the side. That's totally fine. You can kind of rub it off once it gets cool or just to kind of clean it up, right? And so once you have all those parts glued together, we are finally to the last step. And the last step is going to be attaching our beads onto here. Now, in order to do this, what I have found to be most helpful is this is kind of where you want to do a little bit of measuring. In order for this to make the sound, we really want this bead to come about halfway across our circle. Okay, so now what you might want to do is just kind of, and you'll notice here, one's a little longer than the other. That's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? But in order for it to make the sound and to work the way we want it to, we want to begin by placing a knot about halfway across our circle. So I'm going to go ahead and show you kind of how I do that. Right, so holding my string and then just kind of bringing it across and seeing that the halfway on mine is the nose. So I'm just going to kind of, mark that spot with my fingers. And this is where we're going to place a knot. So kind of wrapping that around and then bringing those two open pieces through that loop that I had made. And I'm just going to go ahead and pull that string. Now you'll notice, look what happened to my knots. It unfortunately wound up being a little bit more than half of my circle and coming a little bit across my nose, but that's totally fine, right? As long as it's going to make contact with this side of the face. Now, again, this is where you might want to test your bead in order to see if you need to make this knot a little bit bigger, because this knot is going to keep our bead in the spot that we put it. So because my bead hole has a nice big hole, which is going to make this process a little easier for me, I'm going to go ahead and just make like a standard extra knot here so that I can be sure that my bead is going to stay where I want it to be, right? So I just kind of made a little bit of a bigger knot. So here's probably the hardest part, because now what we're going to do is we're going to have to put these two ends of our string through our bead hole. And so if your string, like mine, has gotten a little bit frayed, you can go ahead and trim it so that you can give it a nice clean edge. And that will definitely make it easier for you to thread it into your bead, right? And once you have that, you're going to go ahead and pull it down to your knot. And then this is where you can just do a classic, left over right, right over left square knot. You don't have to do any kind of a fancy knot. And once again, you can kind of reinforce it by doing right over left, left over right. I just find that that helps it to stay and it makes it a little bit thicker, right? And then you just want to test it to make sure that it's not going to fall out, right? And so there I have my first one done. And then once you've done that, you're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing on the other side. So again, kind of taking your string and being able to kind of see where you want it to go so that it's about halfway across your face. I seem to keep hitting my camera, unfortunately, which keeps kicking it out, and I apologize for that. But then once you do that, making your knot, oops, I just dropped my bead, and then taking and putting your other bead on by making your knot, putting on your bead, and then going ahead and putting your other knot onto there. And then once you have completed that, again, if you do have a glue gun handy, something that I had done was I just put a little dab of glue at the end of my knot before I actually went back and trimmed my string a little bit. You don't have to do that, but again, it just kind of prevents it from falling off or making sure that it's going to stay nice and sturdy as you use this. And then that's it. You have created your spin drum. And so you can begin using your spin drum, kind of practicing with your spin drum, just by spinning it or rolling it in your hands, right? Noticing the rhythmic sound that it makes so you can practice doing some mindful listening and just paying attention to the sound that it makes. You can do some mindful looking, where you're paying attention to what your spin drum looks like as you're using it, right? You can also do some mindful feeling, which is how it feels in your hands to roll your spin drum back and forth, right? And so, as I said, this is not only a tool that we can use to help us to calm down, maybe when we're upset, whether we are feeling maybe worried or sad or frustrated or angry, right? A spin drum can help us to calm ourselves down. It's also a relaxing tool, as I explained before. And what I always say to my kids and to any students that I work with is my favorite time to practice using my mindfulness tools is when I'm bored. Because if I think about it, I get bored at least once a day. So if I kind of develop the habit of using my tools and practicing mindfulness, paying attention on purpose to the present moment, what I notice is that I'm more likely to practice it. And what I love about this mindfulness tool is that not only is it fun, it's also something that serves a purpose. It's also really neat that we made this, right? And this can be even done with one hand, the more that you practice it, right? So I hope that you enjoyed creating this mindfulness tool. I would love to see your completed projects. And I hope that by completing this, that you have seen how simple and easy it is to have fun with mindfulness, to create tools for our toolkit to help us whenever we need to calm ourselves down or anytime that we want to grow our smart parts. The more we practice mindfulness, the more that we can be our very best so that we can be the very best student, the very best brother or sister, the very best athlete or performer, right? And this is something that we can control. So let's remember, friends, what we practice grows stronger. And I hope that this helps you to grow your focus, your fun, and your calm just by using it. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And I hope that you come back for more videos and more fun crafts that we can use everyday items to be able to create more tools for our toolkit.